I didn't like cleaning the Alpha King's hall, but it was the only assignment that kept Marin close enough for me to watch her without fear. So I worked quietly, keeping my head down, my voice soft, and my presence smaller than a shadow. That was how humans survived in the Northern Territories. Silent, unseen, and absolutely unremarkable. The hall itself was enormous, lined floor to ceiling with portraits of queens long gone. Their eyes followed you as you swept, their regal faces frozen in oil and gold leaf. They seemed to whisper the same truth every time I passed beneath them. You do not belong here. Marin hummed beside me, dusting the lower carvings with a faded cloth I'd knotted around her small hand. She liked helping. She said it made her feel like she was earning our bread. At 6 years old, she was already trying to make herself useful, already learning the quiet, invisible ways of survival. Mama, she whispered suddenly, tugging on my sleeve. I didn't look up at first. Yes, sweetheart? Mama, that's you. I paused. What is that? Her voice was soft, reverent, frightened. I straightened slowly, heart ticking once, hard. Marin was pointing toward a portrait near the center of the hall. A woman in a pale silver gown stood with her hands folded delicately, her gaze soft but luminous, as if the painter had captured the moment right before she smiled. I took one step closer, then another. My breath stalled. The woman in the painting looked like me. Not just similar, not just reminiscent. She was me, my face, my eyes, same gray flecked with blue. My mouth, my complexion, a shade too fair for the mountain sun. Even the tilt of her chin mirrored my own, and around her neck. No, I whispered, pressing a trembling hand to my collarbone. The locket she wore was identical to mine. Not similar, identical. Same metalwork, same shape, same tiny etched star. My mother's locket, the one she had told me never to lose, the one she'd made me swear on her deathbed to keep hidden beneath my clothes. I don't understand, I murmured. Mama? Marin's small fingers slipped into mine. Why are you in the picture? I'm not, I tried to say. Sweetheart, I'm not. But even my denial sounded weak, because that was my face. And yet, it couldn't be. The hall was reserved for the portraits of queens, lunas, women who had ruled beside alphas of legend. I was a servant, a refugee, a nobody. Cold washed through me. I forced myself to step back, just as a voice cut through the silence behind us. A voice I recognized instantly, because every human in the North feared it. Explain why a dead Luna looks exactly like you. My blood turned to ice. I spun so fast Marin stumbled behind me. Instinctively, I pulled her close, shielding her small body with mine. The man standing at the entrance of the hall was tall enough to eclipse the nearest window, his silhouette sharp as a blade. Darkness clung to him like a second cloak. His eyes, wolf-bright and merciless, were locked on my face. Casian Nightfall, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, the most feared ruler alive, and he was staring at me as if he'd seen a ghost. I dropped into a clumsy bow, my voice catching. Your Majesty, forgive me, I didn't know the room was restricted at this hour. We were only cleaning. If you want us to leave, I asked a question. His tone was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that came before a wolf lunged. I swallowed hard. I don't know why she looks like me. His gaze flicked to my locket. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Then, slowly, very slowly, his eyes shifted to Marin. She stared back at him, unafraid, curious even. My daughter hardly flinched at anything. She had always been strange that way. Kasian took one step forward, then another. The air thickened, charged with something ancient. His voice dropped to something low and dangerous. Who are you? I couldn't breathe. Mama, Marin whispered, tugging the hem of my dress. Why is the king looking at me like that? I didn't know. I didn't know anything. But I could feel it. A shift. A crack. A break in the world I thought I understood. Because the Alpha King wasn't just staring at me anymore. He was staring at my daughter. And something in his expression changed. Recognition. Shock. And fear. Whatever he saw in her face, it shattered the quiet of my small, safe life. And I knew in that terrible moment that nothing in the kingdom would ever be the same again. Casian didn't roar. He didn't shift. He didn't even raise his voice. But somehow his silence was the most terrifying thing in the hall. He stepped closer, slowly, deliberately, circling me the way a wolf circles something it cannot identify. Not prey, not enemy. Something far more dangerous in its uncertainty. I swallowed, pulling Marin behind me, my palm covering her small hand. I could feel her heartbeat through my skin, fast but steady. She wasn't scared yet. I was terrified enough for both of us. Caitian's eyes tracked every inch of my face as he moved around me, sharp as winter steel. Left side, right side, then back to the front. He wasn't looking at me. He was studying me, searching my features, comparing me to the portrait behind us. Each step he took made my breath tighter. Finally he spoke, voice low and lethal. "The locket." I froze. "Your Majesty, give me the locket." That tone wasn't a request. It wasn't even an order. It was something ancient. A command woven into blood and bone, the kind wolves answered without thinking. But I wasn't a wolf. I was just a human who suddenly felt much, much smaller. My fingers trembled as I lifted the chain from around my neck. The metal felt heavier than usual, as though the truth inside it was waking up after years of being kept quiet. When the pendant dropped into my palm, Caitian's breath caught. Not sharply, softly, almost painfully. He grabbed the locket before I could offer it properly, his fingers brushing my wrist. His body went completely still. Then, he went pale. Caitian Nightfall, the terror of the North. The king who'd once torn a rogue in half with his bare hands, went pale. "No," he breathed. I felt the room tilt. "Your Majesty?" He held up the locket like it was a relic pulled from a grave. "This," he whispered, voice cracking at the edges, "belonged to my mate." I stared at him, uncomprehending. "My mate," he repeated, each syllable heavier, colder, sharper than the last. "The Luna who vanished 26 years ago." The words struck my chest like a physical blow. "No," I said, shaking my head. "My mother gave it to me. She said it has been in our family for generations." He looked at me then, truly looked, and something inside him broke open. "Your mother lied." My knees weakened. "That pendant," he continued, voice deepening into grief, fury, and something dangerously close to heartbreak, "was forged for my Luna, my queen. There is only one in existence. I had it made myself." Impossible. Utterly impossible. My mother wasn't... She couldn't... I stammered, trying to breathe past the rising panic. She wasn't a queen. She wasn't even a wolf. She was a healer. A traveler. Caitian cut me off, stepping close enough that his shadow swallowed mine. "My Luna was pregnant when she disappeared." The world stopped. Completely. His words hit me so hard my vision blurred. Pregnant. Vanished. A locket she shouldn't have had. A portrait with my face. A 6-year-old girl with eyes too bright, instincts too sharp, fearlessly standing before a king as if she'd known him all her life. My mouth opened. Nothing came out. He studied me. My features, my trembling hands, the exact angle of my cheekbones, the shape of my brow. Every second that passed tightened the invisible noose around my lungs. You look exactly like her, he murmured. But you're younger. He glanced toward Marin, then back at me. For a moment, just a moment, fear flickered behind all that power. He wasn't afraid of me, he was afraid of what I meant. I forced a whisper through numb lips. Are you saying you think I'm... He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The weight of his silence filled in every missing piece, every unanswered question, every memory from childhood that had never quite made sense. Why my mother never spoke of my father, why she flinched at howls in the distance, why she refused to live near any wolf settlement, why she clutched this locket as though it were a lifeline, why she made me swear to keep Marin's birth a secret. Shock hollowed my stomach. Fear threatened to swallow me whole. Kasian stepped closer, voice so low it trembled. Tell me the truth, Isla. His eyes dropped to my daughter. Is she... mine? I pulled Marin against me instinctively, protectively, though from what? I didn't know. His next words shattered the air. Because if she is, then you are the daughter I lost. The hall emptied so fast it felt like the air was sucked out with the soldiers. One command from the Alpha King, sharp as a blade through bone, and every guard, every advisor, every servant vanished. Their footsteps thundered down the corridor until nothing remained but silence, and the echo of my heart pounding. Kasian didn't speak. He just walked to the enormous doors and slammed them shut. The lock dropped into place with a sound that felt final, permanent, like the sealing of a fate I hadn't agreed to. I held Marin's hand tighter. The king stood with his back to us for a long moment, shoulders rising and falling in slow, heavy breaths, as if he was wrestling with a beast inside him. When he finally turned around, his expression had shifted into something sharper, more dangerous than suspicion, determination, possession, recognition warring with disbelief. Tell me your age, he said, not softly, not kindly, a command. My age? My voice cracked. Why does that matter? Answer me. I swallowed, the words scraping up my throat. 26. The moment the number left my lips, Kasian froze. Completely. Silence rippled through the hall like a cold wind. I should have stopped talking. I should have kept breathing. I should have pretended ignorance. But the truth slipped out. The sort of truth that only hurts once spoken aloud. I was born the same year your Luna died. Kasian's jaw flexed. A sound, half breath, half growl, left him. Not anger. Not yet. It was something older, deeper. A sound of realization cracking open. His eyes flicked past me, downward, to Marin. She peeked out from behind my leg, her little fingers curled in the fabric of my dress. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't hiding her face. She simply watched him with that strange stillness she carried in moments of danger. Like she wasn't afraid, because she already knew something I didn't. Her golden hair caught the torchlight, haloing her in molten warmth. Her eyes, bright, perceptive, almost glowing, studied him back. A 6-year-old should have been terrified of the Alpha King. My child was curious. Kasian took one step forward, then another. He crouched slightly, not fully kneeling, but lowering himself enough to meet her gaze. His nostrils flared, not aggressively, but instinctively, scenting, assessing, the way wolves identify kin. Marin tilted her head the same moment he did, a mirrored motion, something tightened in my chest. This can't be happening, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Marin blinked slowly, her lashes catching the light. She didn't break eye contact with the king. Kasian's voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. She smells like me. My vision went white around the edges. No, I breathed. No, that's not possible. She's human. She is not human. His tone held no uncertainty, no hesitation. It was absolute. I shook my head too fast. You don't know her. You don't know. He cut me off with a look so sharp I felt it physically. Her scent is wolf-born, royal-blooded, my blood. His chest rose and fell with a slow, dangerous rhythm. And you, your age, your face. His gaze dropped to the locket still in his hand. A child born the year my Luna died? With her face? Wearing her locket? Panic surged up my spine. My mother wasn't her, I insisted. She wasn't. She couldn't have been. Your mother lied to you. The words hit harder than any blow. She wasn't Luna, I repeated weakly. She wasn't even Wolf. Cassian's eyes darkened with something terrifyingly close to grief. Neither was my mate, he whispered. Not fully. My breath hitched. What? Cassian stood slowly, towering over me again, but his voice softened, not with gentleness, but with memory. My Luna was half human, half wolf, a secret kept from the court so they wouldn't try to take her life. My knees weakened, half human, like me. His gaze drifted back to Marin. Marin, who had never feared wolves. Marin, who sensed emotions better than any adult. Marin, who learned faster than the other children. Marin, who sometimes stared at the moon as if it were calling her name. He inhaled again. Slow, careful, devastated. She is mine, he whispered, voice breaking. I can smell it. I stumbled back, heart hammering. No, no, she can't be. He stepped closer. Isla, he said, voice trembling like a man at the edge of a cliff. She smells like my blood. Marin slipped her hand into mine, her fingers warm and steady. Mama? She asked softly. Why does he look sad? I didn't know, but I could feel it. A truth bigger than us. A truth that had been buried for 26 years was clawing its way into the light, and the king knew it. He whispered, barely audible, but irrevocably certain. You are the daughter I lost. I didn't want to go to the king's tower. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to take Marin and disappear into the night, to vanish the same way my mother once had. But Cassian's guards didn't give me the illusion of choice. They escorted me through the palace halls after dusk, their expressions unreadable, their steps echoing too loudly in the silence. Marin had already fallen asleep, exhausted from the swirl of confusion and fear. I'd tucked her into the small guest bed I'd been given, kissed her forehead, and stepped away feeling like I was leaving part of my soul behind. Now, climbing the spiral stairs into Cassian's tower, I felt that same soul thinning, stretching toward a breaking point. The king waited for me in a room lit only by moonlight. The windows were tall, the curtains drawn back, the air cold enough to make my breath fog. A table stood in the center, draped with dark velvet. On it rested a stack of letters. Cassian didn't greet me, didn't offer me a seat, didn't even look at me at first. He stared at the letters as though they were capable of killing him a second time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, hollowed by years of grief. These were hidden from me, he said, locked away by the same council members who tried to bury the truth. I swallowed hard. What are they? Letters, he murmured, fingers trembling as he touched the top page. From your mother. My stomach dropped. No, no, it couldn't be. My mother never wrote to anyone, I whispered. She barely spoke about her past. He slid the top letter toward me. You should read it. My hands shook as I lifted the delicate paper. The ink was faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers. The loops, the curves, the way she pressed too hard at the start of every word then softened as the line flowed. I had seen that handwriting 1,000 times in her small healer's notes. I knew it, like I knew my own breath. The letter began. My king, they plan to kill me, and our unborn child. I must run. I stared. I stared until the words blurred and the room tilted. This couldn't be real. Her voice, her quiet, steady voice, echoed in those lines. Desperate, afraid, and written to a man she called my king. Kasian stepped closer, watching me carefully. Your mother didn't leave me, he said softly. She was running for her life. I blinked hard, forcing the world back into focus as I turned the page. More handwriting spilled across the parchment. They say a half-human heir will destroy the kingdom. They mean to end the bloodline before it begins. I beg you, do not search for me. If they discover I fled, they will hunt me. They will hunt our child. I will keep her safe, even if I must vanish forever. Her. She wrote her. She knew. My knees gave out. I caught the edge of the table, gripping it with numb fingers as the truth carved itself into me. My mother wasn't a wandering healer. She wasn't a runaway villager saved by kindness. She wasn't a nameless refugee surviving by her herbs and soft hands. She was a Luna, a queen, a woman carrying a forbidden child, fleeing execution at the hands of the very wolves sworn to protect her. And I had been her reason to run. Kasian spoke again, voice softer than I'd ever heard it. She wasn't alone. She had allies in the palace. A maid she trusted smuggled some letters to me before the council intercepted the rest. I only found these after they were forcibly removed from power. I stared at the stack, each page a confession of terror and love and sacrifice. Another line burned into me as I read, "If this child survives, tell her she was wanted. Tell her she was loved." My breath hitched. Kasian's eyes glistened, not with pity, but with the heartbreak of a man who had lost two people the same night. Your mother died protecting you, he whispered, not running from shame, not from guilt, but from a kingdom that saw your blood as a threat. I pressed a hand over my mouth, the sob clawing up my throat unstoppable. She suffered because of me, I choked, because I existed. No, Kasian said sharply, stepping forward. She suffered because they feared what you represented. A new line, a new future, a child who would not be controlled. I shook my head, tears falling harder. He lifted the letter from my trembling hands, his fingers brushing mine with unexpected gentleness. You were never the burden, he said. You were the miracle. I wanted to believe him, but all I could see was my mother's tired eyes, her shaking hands, her whispered warnings as she held me close in the cold nights. Run if they ever find you. Never trust a wolf. Never let them see what you are. Bone-deep understanding sank into me like ice. She wasn't teaching me fear. She was teaching me survival, because she knew one day the past would come for us. And it had. I didn't sleep after reading the letters. I don't think I even breathed properly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's handwriting, her desperate lines, her lonely courage, the way she told a king she loved him but chose my life over her own. Kasian didn't sleep either. I could tell. His eyes were too sharp, too awake, like a wolf pacing the edge of a storm. He walked me back toward the guest wing, but before we reached the corridor, he stopped. Not abruptly, slowly, as if he'd reached an invisible barrier only he could feel. We need to talk, he said. A chill crawled along my spine. Your Majesty? His jaw tightened. There is something I didn't tell you earlier. I waited. He didn't soften his words. He didn't try to make them gentle. He delivered them like truth, carved from ice. 3 members of my High Council still hold power. I frowned. The same council who plotted against your Luna? Yes. The word dropped like a blade. My breath caught. But why? Why would you allow? Because when she died, Kasian said, voice lowering, becoming something wounded and dangerous, I lost myself. My grief tore the kingdom apart. before I could gather myself, before I could force them out. They'd rooted themselves deeper, bound themselves to laws I could not break without triggering a civil war. My stomach turned. And they would kill anyone who threatens that power, he finished. I whispered, including me. A muscle in his jaw clenched. Especially you. Fear slithered through my chest. He stepped closer. Something like regret. No, something like guilt, shadowing his expression. They know I never believed the story of her death, he said quietly. They know I've been searching for answers. And now that you've appeared, he exhaled. If they discover who you are, what you might be. I'm not anyone, I said quickly, desperately. I'm not a threat. I'm just. Isla, Cassian cut in sharply. They will not see a servant. They will see the return of the Luna they murdered. And they will not tolerate the existence of a half-human heir. Half-human. The words felt like lightning across my skin. They weren't meant to hurt. But they did. They exposed the truth I had tried to bury my entire life, that I didn't belong anywhere. Not in the human world, not in the wolf world, not even in my own mother's past. I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling suddenly smaller. Caitian's tone hardened, carved by resolve. You must stay hidden until I decide how to protect you. But no. His voice was a command again. Quiet, deadly, absolute. They will hunt you. And if they cannot reach you, his eyes flicked toward the door of my borrowed chamber. They will go for your child. My heart crashed against my ribs. Marin, she will not be harmed, he said quickly, fiercely, not while I breathe. But what can you do? I whispered. Your council. They rule under you. They rule because I allowed them to, he replied, voice low. And the moment they try to touch you, touch her, I will end them. My breath trembled. Cassian stepped close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the truth of his promise. You and Marin stay here, he said. No hallways, no gardens, no contact with other wolves. Not until I decide how to keep you both alive. Fear throbbed in my throat. I don't want to hide, I whispered. You must. His eyes softened for the briefest moment. For your mother's sake. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that this was unfair, that none of this was my fault, that I was tired of running from things I didn't understand. But then, a small hand tugged at my dress. Mama? I turned, and my blood froze. Marin stood in the doorway of our chamber, her little face pale in the moonlight. She shouldn't have been awake. She shouldn't have heard anything, but her eyes, her innocent, golden-flecked eyes, were glowing. Not metaphorically, not like a trick of light. They were glowing. Marin? My voice cracked. Sweetheart, what's wrong? She pressed herself against my leg, staring down the dark hallway behind us. Mama? Her voice was small, shaking. They're already looking for us. Caitian stiffened. What? He demanded, stepping closer. Marin pointed toward the staircase, toward the darkness below. Her gaze sharpened in a way no 6-year-old should ever look, in a way that looked eerily wolf-born. They smell angry, she whispered, and scared. My heart dropped. She looked up at Caitian, unblinking, certain. They're coming, Alpha. Silence fell like a death sentence. Fear surged. Revelation ignited. Urgency slammed into my ribs. Caitian moved instantly, placing himself between us and the corridor. Isla, he growled, get your daughter inside, now. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed Marin and pulled her into the room as the king's voice deepened, thunder in the narrow hallway. They've made their first move. Marin clung to me as the door slammed behind us. Her last trembling whisper cut through the dark. Mama, they know who we are. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until Marin exhaled first. She sat cross-legged on the floor before dawn had even touched the sky, her little hands in her lap, her gaze fixed on nothing. No, not nothing. Something. Something only she could sense. Kasian had not slept. He stood by the window, arms crossed, every muscle tense. A silent, coiled storm. I sat beside Marin, trying to make my voice gentle. Sweetheart, tell me again. Slowly. She blinked up at me, solemn, unafraid, as if seeing shadows whisper was normal for a 6-year-old child. The bad ones, she repeated softly. The ones in red robes. Kasian's body went rigid. My pulse slammed through my ears. Red robes? I whispered. The council? Marin nodded once. They smell like old milk. I swallowed. What does that mean, baby? She furrowed her brow in concentration, as if searching for the right words. It means they're hiding something bad. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And they're talking about you, Mama. My stomach plummeted. Kasian took a step forward, slow, deliberate, like a predator trying not to frighten its prey, even though we were the frightened ones. What were they saying? His voice was quiet, too quiet, stretched tight with a thread of barely contained fury. Marin tilted her head, that uncanny seriousness settling over her features, the same look I'd seen last night when her eyes glowed gold. They said Mama should have died with Grandma, she murmured. My heart cracked. Kasian drew in a sharp breath. Not a gasp. A snarl dragged back at the last possible second. I touched Marin's cheek, trying to keep my voice steady even as terror clawed at my ribs. How do you know this, my love? Did you hear them? She shook her head. I didn't hear them with ears. Kasian and I exchanged a look, his blazing, mine trembling. Marin pressed her small hand to her chest. I heard them in here, like a growly feeling. Kasian moved so suddenly that I flinched. He crouched before her, lowering himself onto one knee. Marin, he said softly, can you tell me exactly what you felt? She thought for a moment, then lifted her gaze to his, open, trusting, eerily perceptive. They're scared, she said simply, and angry, and they smell rotten when they think about Mama. Kasian closed his eyes, and when he opened them, again, he looked at me, not with fear, not with suspicion, but with dawning realization. She's sensing wolf emotions. My mouth went dry. But she's half human. She shouldn't be able to... She's not just half, he murmured. She was born from a Luna and the Alpha King of the North. Wolf instincts run deeper than blood. They run in the soul. He looked back at Marin with something like awe, fear, reverence. This child, he whispered, is alpha blood. A true heir. Her instincts are awakening far earlier than expected. Marin beamed, proud of herself. Grandpa said the same thing in my dream. I blinked. In your what? She nodded cheerfully. The man with the sad eyes. He said he's your papa. Kashin's head snapped toward me, but Marin continued, unaware of the way her words shattered the room. He said he couldn't protect Grandma, but he'll protect us now. A cold shiver wrapped around my spine. Kashin's voice broke. My father has been dead for 10 years. Marin shrugged lightly. He comes sometimes when I'm sleepy. Kashin turned away, dragging a hand through his hair, breath shaking for the first time since I'd met him. She's not just sensing wolves, he murmured. She's sensing memories, spirits, bonds. That's impossible, I whispered. No, he said, voice trembling with a truth he didn't want to believe. It's rare, but not impossible. Some alpha heirs are born with ancestral sight. It's considered a sacred gift. His eyes locked onto mine. And it only appears in the bloodline of the crown. I pressed a hand to my mouth, fighting tears. My daughter. My gentle, curious, innocent child. Marin pattered into my lap and curled into me like she always did when overwhelmed. But her eyes were far too ancient for her small body. "Don't be sad, Mama," she whispered, patting my cheek. "I can help. I can tell when people want to hurt us, like the red robe men." Cajun inhaled sharply, his voice dropping to a deadly hush. "They're already plotting another move." Marin nodded matter-of-factly. "They said you're the mistake they should have fixed long ago." My entire body went cold. Cajun straightened, a hurricane in human form. "They will not touch you," he vowed. The words were a promise, a threat, a declaration of war. I clutched Marin closer, breathing in her warm scent, realizing with dawning dread and fierce, primal love. My daughter wasn't just seeing danger. She was warning us. And now that her gift was awakening, she was the most precious and most hunted child in the entire kingdom. I should have known nothing good comes after an Alpha King says your name like a vow. "Isla," Caitian said quietly, in that voice that made even stone walls listen. "I will not lose my blood again." The words landed like an earthquake beneath my ribs. Marin was still perched on his knee. Yes, his knee, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She'd climbed into his lap without hesitation, small hands gripping his cloak, her cheek resting against his shoulder like she'd known him her entire life. Like she sensed something I hadn't allowed myself to believe. Cajun's hand rested lightly on her back, and he held himself so still it was as if he feared breaking the moment. This was the king the kingdom feared, the ruthless Nightfall Alpha, the undefeated ruler of the North. Yet here he was, sitting on the floor of his private tower with a 6-year-old child curled against him, and eyes that glistened with something dangerously close to wonder. It was the gentlest I'd ever seen him look, the gentlest he might have ever been. But when his gaze rose to mine, that softness burned into resolve. "Both of you," he said, standing with Marin in his arms. "You will move into the royal wing, immediately." My breath snagged. No, absolutely not. He turned fully toward me, Marin balanced on his hip like she'd always belonged there. "This is not a negotiation. I'm a servant," I snapped, "and she's a child. We don't belong anywhere near." "You belong exactly there," he cut in. "Because you are my Luna's daughter, and because your child." He looked down at Marin, and for a moment, something reverent flickered across his face. "Is my blood." My knees nearly buckled. He continued, tone soft but unyielding. "You think I will let you sleep in the servants' wing? You think I will let conspirators walk freely while my heir hides behind thin walls and borrowed blankets?" His jaw tightened, fury at the thought alone. "You think I will lose my family a second time?" Family. The word hit harder than any threat. "I don't want to uproot her again," I whispered. "She's been through so much." "And you think staying here is safety?" he demanded. "The council has already set their sights on you. They see you as an obstacle, your daughter as a threat." Marin looked up at him then, eyes bright, utterly unfazed by talk of danger. "Are you going to carry me in your castle too?" Caitian blinked, as if the question had touched some fragile part of him he didn't show the world. "Yes, little one," he murmured. "As often as you like." She grinned, a wide, toothy smile that made her look impossibly young, and wrapped her arms around his neck. And Cassian, the Alpha King who had ripped armies apart, the king who made wolves kneel by presence alone, smiled. I felt something unravel in my chest. "No," I whispered, stepping back, desperate to regain control. "You're doing this because of guilt. Because you failed my mother. Because you think protecting us will make up for—" "I am doing this," he interrupted, stepping closer, "because you are mine to protect. Because my mate trusted me with her blood. And because I will not fail a second time. His voice dropped to something low and dangerous, not to frighten me, but to reassure me in the way only an alpha could. You and Marin will live in the royal wing, with guards, with safety, with me. My breath trembled. Casian, I can't. You can, he said. And you will. He shifted Marin slightly, as if unwilling to let go but needing one hand free. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek with surprising gentleness. I know you don't trust me yet, he murmured. I know you're afraid. I know your mother taught you to run. His eyes, those wolf-bright, storm-cold eyes, softened. But she also trusted me once, enough to love me, enough to carry my heir. My throat tightened painfully. He lowered his voice further, almost a whisper. And whether you believe it or not, Isla, you carry her strength. A trembling exhale escaped me. He pressed his forehead lightly to mine. Not intimate, not romantic, but a pledge. Aluna's daughter is never left unprotected, he breathed, and her child will never fear again. A warmth spread through me. Fear and defiance, yes, but threaded now with something far more dangerous. Hope. Fragile, trembling hope. Marin poked my cheek suddenly, giggling. Mama, we get a big room now. Cassian chuckled softly. Actually chuckled, and the sound was so foreign I nearly forgot how to breathe. I have an entire wing for you, he told her. And it's yours now. She squealed, thrilled beyond measure. I swallowed hard. Fine, I whispered. We'll move. Cassian nodded once, relief flickering like a shadow behind his eyes. Good, he said softly. Because I refuse to lose either of you. And with my daughter in his arms, and my mother's blood in my veins, I crossed the threshold into a fate I had never asked for, but one that suddenly felt terrifyingly like home. The great hall felt different that morning, charged, restless, humming with a tension that scraped against my skin like the edge of a blade. Wolves filled every tiered row, whispers snapping through the air like sparks off dry wood. Human blood? She can't be his heir. That child, there's no wolf in her. A pretender. A distraction. I stood beside Cassian on the raised platform, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear anything else. The wolf-blooded nobles stared with a mix of suspicion and outright disdain. They looked at me as if I were something dragged in from the gutter. Beside me, Marin held my hand. Small. Steady. Her thumb stroked the side of my palm in a motion far too soothing for a child of 6. Cassian stepped forward, shoulders squared, authority radiating from him in a force that pressed the air thin. Quiet. His voice cracked through the room like a whip. The whispers died instantly. You have questions, he said coldly. You have doubts. Fine. Doubt me all you want. But the growl beneath his tone vibrated through the floor. No one questions my blood. The declaration landed like thunder. Yet from the front row, one of the council members, Lord Varon, pale-haired, serpent-eyed, slowly rose, hands clasped behind his back, the picture of practiced politeness. Your Majesty, he murmured with a slight bow, I would never dare question your word. Lie. Every syllable was dripping with it. Varon tilted his head just enough to address the crowd. But the pack is uneasy. His eyes flicked to me, then to Marin, with an oily smile. We have a responsibility to them, do we not? To demonstrate transparency? Cassian's lips peeled back in a snarl. Choose your next words with care, counselor. Varon smiled thinly, unbothered. Let the child scent the room. My stomach dropped. The hall erupted in murmurs again. Let her what? She's human. She can't scent anything. This is ridiculous. Varon lifted a hand, silencing the crowd like he owned them. If she carries your blood, your Majesty. He dipped his head mockingly. Then surely she can identify who in this room hides deceit in their scent. Beside him, the two other council members, Tazian and Moro, watched with barely concealed triumph. They wanted this. They wanted to turn the entire kingdom against us. Caitian took a step forward, aura flaring like wildfire. You dare use my granddaughter as a spectacle? Varen's expression didn't change. Only to silence rumors. For your benefit, of course. I felt faint. My heart slammed against my ribs hard enough to bruise. Marin, I whispered, bending to her level. You don't have to. I want to, she said simply. Caitian froze. I froze. Marin stepped forward. Tiny. Barefoot. Her hair a halo of gold. The only child in a hall full of wolves who could kill with a swipe of their claws. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Caitian reached out instinctively, as if to stop her. But Marin slipped out of reach with a gentle stubbornness that was all her own. She walked straight to the center of the room, turning in a slow circle. The hall fell deathly silent. It was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat echoing back to me. Wolves leaned forward, breath held, waiting to see a child embarrass herself. What is she doing? She's just standing. She can't possibly. Marin inhaled. Long, slow, deep. Her eyes fluttered half-closed, lashes trembling. Then she opened them, and they glowed, golden, bright. A flash of the power she did not yet understand. She raised her arm, pointing with her tiny finger. At Varen, then at Tacian, then at Morrow. Mama, she said with perfect, devastating clarity. Her voice carried through the hall like a bell. Those are the rotten ones. The hall erupted. Gasps, cries, growls. Wolves surged to their feet. Cazian moved with lethal speed, stepping between Marin and the council members, his power sending a shockwave through the chamber. Enough! His roar silenced every voice, every breath, every heartbeat. Varen's face drained of all color. Not because of fear, but because he knew the pack now stared at him with murder in their eyes. Your Majesty, he tried, voice cracking. She's a child. She doesn't know what she's... She sensed lies, Kazian growled, and she scented yours. Tazian stumbled back. Morrow's hands shook violently. Marin walked calmly toward me, slipping her hand back into mine. They're scared, she whispered. They're scared of you, Mama. Of me. Of her. Of truth. Caitian turned, eyes blazing with a fury I had only heard of in whispered legends. Guards, he commanded, voice like steel tearing through bone. Seize the three counselors for treason against the crown. Chaos exploded. Soldiers rushed forward. The council members shouted protests. The pack roared its outrage, but all I felt was Marin's small hand gripping mine, and the single, horrifying realization. There would be no going back now. Marin's truth had just shattered the kingdom. The warning came, before the danger, before the bells, before the shouts, before the wolves on patrol began to howl. It came from Marin. She sat bolt upright in the plush bed of the royal wing, eyes glowing faint gold, breath quick and sharp, as though something invisible had reached through the walls and touched her spine. Mama, she whispered, clutching my arm with tiny fingers that trembled. They want you. The words froze my blood. Marin, what? They're here. Her voice was eerily calm, her gaze unfocused. Outside the walls. Lots of them. They smell wrong. A heartbeat later, the alarms shattered the silence. A deep, echoing howl tore through the night. Warning, summoning, enraging the entire pack at once. I shot to my feet. Maya, stationed outside our chamber door, burst inside with a drawn blade. Her eyes flashed bright wolf gold. Stay behind me, she barked. The rogues have breached the eastern gate. My stomach hollowed. Rogues. Inside the capital. Inside the castle walls. This wasn't random. This wasn't an accident. This was the council making its next move. Before I could speak, Marin slid off the bed and ran to the balcony. Maya reached for her. Too slow. Marin, I cried. But my daughter stood still as a moonlit statue, staring into the black forest beyond the walls. Her nose twitched. Her eyes brightened. "They're coming," she murmured. "For Mama." A violent crash shook the tower. My pulse roared in my ears. And then, Kasian arrived. The door slammed open, hitting the wall hard enough to crack it. He strode in like a storm walking on two legs, dark cloak half thrown over one shoulder, eyes burning with lethal intent. "How many?" he snapped to Maya. "At least a dozen." Coordinated breach. He turned to me, his jaw clenched, breath sharp, the scent of fury rolling off him in waves. "They weren't here for the throne," he said. "They were sent for you." My knees weakened. For me. For Marin. Kasian's gaze flicked to my daughter, taking in her glowing eyes, her widened pupils, her eerily serene expression. "She sensed them," he muttered, before any guard did. "She said they want her mother," Maya added grimly. Kasian's snarl vibrated the floor. "No one touches my blood," he growled. "No one." He moved to the balcony, standing behind Marin. Not touching her, just hovering with an instinctive protective intensity that wrapped around her like a shield. "Marin," he said softly, "what do you smell?" She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even seem afraid. She simply pointed toward the courtyard. "There," she whispered. "They're coming through the old gate." Kasian's eyes widened in shock. No scout reported movement from that direction. "She knew," Maya murmured. "She knew before the pack did." My daughter turned her head slightly, looking up at Kasian with two old eyes. "They want Mama," she said again. "But someone else wants to protect us." Kasian crouched to her level, voice low. "Who?" Marin reached out and touched his chest. Her small palm flattened over his heartbeat. "You," she whispered. "Your family." Kasian froze. Completely. It was the first time I'd ever seen the Alpha King go utterly still, not from danger, not from rage, but from something raw and wordless that tore through him. "You know me," he breathed. Marin nodded. "I know your smell. Like storms. And home." My throat tightened. Tears burned behind my eyes. But then, a bone-shaking crash shattered the fragile moment. Stone splintered. A roar echoed through the tower. The rogues had reached the inner courtyard. Kasian rose to his full height, the shift rippling under his skin like an earthquake waiting to break free. "Get Isla and the child to the safe chamber," he barked. "Kasian!" I grabbed his arm. He stopped. Barely. Just long enough to meet my eyes. His voice dropped to a vow, low and violent and absolutely certain. "I will protect you. I swear it on my Luna's grave." Maya grabbed my wrist, tugging me toward the secret stairwell behind the tapestry. But Marin broke free and sprinted to the doorway that led to the balcony. "Marin!" I cried. She pointed straight at the courtyard below. And I saw him. Kasian had shifted midair, leaping from the balcony to the stone courtyard in a blur of obsidian and moonlight. His wolf hit the ground with a snarl that shook the earth. He didn't fight like a king. He fought like vengeance incarnate. Marin clutched the railing, eyes glowing brighter and brighter. "See?" she whispered, her voice full of certainty, full of recognition. "I told you. He's family." Terror jolted through me. For Kasian, for Marin, for the truth unraveling faster than I could breathe. But beneath the terror, another emotion pulsed. Something darker, deeper, unavoidable, instinctive loyalty, and an impossible bond we could no longer outrun. I had never believed in destiny. Not when I was born in a roadside hut. Not while scrubbing floors in the servant's wing. Not even when my daughter began sensing lies before they were spoken. But as Elder Maya unrolled the ancient scroll that night, hands trembling, voice barely steady, I felt destiny breathe down my neck like a living thing. We were gathered in the king's private war chamber. Map tables cleared, windows sealed, guards dismissed. Only 4 of us remained: Kasian, Elder Maya, Marin, and me. The rogues had been defeated, but the castle was still humming with fear. The walls smelled of smoke and blood. We had escaped the attack, but not the truth behind it. "Your Majesty," Elder Maya whispered, adjusting the heavy moonstone pendant at her throat. I had hoped never to open this scroll again. Cassian's jaw ticked. "You kept something from me." "Not from you," she corrected softly. "From the kingdom." She unrolled the parchment. The air thickened, old magic waking like a beast stretching after centuries of slumber. Symbols shone faintly under the torchlight. A crest, half a sun, half a crescent moon, glowed at the top. My mother's locket, Marin's birthmark. Elder Maya's eyes flicked to me, and then to Marin. "This prophecy," she said quietly, "was written on the night your Luna disappeared." I felt the blood drain from my face. Cation stepped closer to the table, eyes narrowed. "Read it." Maya pressed her fingers against the parchment to steady herself. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "When the Luna lost rises through her daughter's blood, the kingdom shall be remade, walls shall fall, old reigns shall crumble, and a child of half sun, half moon shall decide the next Alpha King." Silence, heavy, suffocating, alive. The torches flickered as if the castle itself reacted. Marin stood beside me, holding the edge of my cloak, head tilted as though listening to something beyond the room. Kasian inhaled sharply. "Half sun, half moon," he repeated, voice cracking with realization. His gaze dropped to Marin, the child with golden human hair and wolf-bright lunar eyes. A child born of my mother, the Luna, and me, born after her disappearance. A child who smelled of him, his bloodline, his power, his legacy. "Elder," he said hoarsely, "are you telling me that my Luna's line did not end with her death?" Maya looked at me, directly, penetratingly. It lived through her daughter. The world tilted around me. I stumbled back until I hit the wall, the truth slamming into me like a physical blow. My mother hadn't left me a legacy of hardship. She had left me a destiny I never asked for. "But I'm not—" My voice cracked. "I'm not royal. I'm not even—" "You are the Luna reborn," Maya said gently. "Not through magic, through blood, through survival." Kasian turned toward me slowly, as if afraid a sudden movement would shatter the fragile truth forming between us. "You are my mate's child," he whispered. Emotion clogged my throat. "But Marin—" I looked down, hands shaking. "What does it mean for her?" Maya touched the glowing crest on the parchment. "She carries both legacies," she murmured. "Sun from you, moon from him." She pointed at Kasian. My breath caught. "And the prophecy says she will decide the next Alpha King. Not the council. Not tradition. Her." The words rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. The kingdom had always chosen its kings. By trial, by ritual, by bloodshed. But now, a child would choose. My child. "Marin." Kasian knelt before her, voice barely above a whisper. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his expression breaking into something both reverent and terrified. "You're not just my granddaughter," he said. "You are the future of this kingdom." Marin blinked up at him, solemn and unafraid. "I know," she said simply. Emotion slammed into me. Fear, love, destiny, overwhelming weight, and something new. A dawning understanding that the world I thought I belonged to was much larger, much deeper, and far more dangerous. I sank to my knees, pulling Marin into my arms. Kasian's hand hovered above my back, not touching, not claiming, just there. Steady, solid, present. Isla, he murmured, voice low and raw. Your mother ran so the kingdom could survive. You returned so it could heal. And your daughter? His gaze drifted to Marin, awe thick in his voice. She will lead us through what comes next. My heart pounded. My breath shook. This prophecy, I whispered, it will paint targets on her. Caitian's eyes hardened. Alpha, king, protector igniting in their depths. Then the kingdom will learn one thing, he said, voice edged with steel. No one touches the child of the sun and moon, and no one threatens the Luna's line ever again. The prophecy glowed brighter on the table. Marin pressed her forehead against mine. I'm not scared, Mama, she whispered. We're meant for this. And for the first time, I felt it too. Not just fear, not just shock, but destiny, rising, living, breathing through us. The Luna lost, had returned through her child, and nothing in the kingdom would ever be the same. Dawn should have been peaceful, soft light, morning incense, the gentle hush of wolves gathering for the daily offering, a ritual meant to bless the kingdom's young. But the moment I stepped into the courtyard with Marin's hand in mine, something felt wrong. The air was too still, too sharp, too watchful. Marin tugged my sleeve, whispering, Mama, something smells bad. Her eyes weren't glowing, but they didn't need to. That quiet dread in her voice was enough. I squeezed her hand. Stay close. We walked toward the altar, priests in pale robes arranging flowers and moonwater bowls. Everything looked normal. But the hairs on my arms rose, my wolfless instincts screaming warnings I couldn't name. 2 palace guards nodded as I approached. Too quickly. Too rehearsed. Then one of them smiled at Marin, and the smile never reached his eyes. Mama, Marin whispered again, fingers trembling in mine. That's the sour milk smell. My breath caught. The traitorous council. They weren't done. They weren't defeated. They were here. Before I could react, 2 guards lunged. One grabbed my arm. The other wrenched Marin from my side. No! I screamed, my voice slicing through the courtyard like a blade. Marin shrieked, kicking and thrashing. Mama! Mama! The guard who held her clamped a hand over her mouth. Quiet, brat! Rage detonated inside me so violently I felt something primal snap awake. Something my mother must have carried. Something the Luna passed down even to daughters born without a wolf. I became nothing but instinct, nothing but claws made of desperation, nothing but a mother. I slammed my elbow into the first guard's throat. He choked, stumbling back. My other hand reached for Marin's captor, fingers locking around the wrist that held her. Let her go. I twisted with everything inside me, fear, fury, bloodline, destiny, and the guard howled as bone cracked. Marin fell forward, and I caught her midair, spinning her behind me. But more guards, traitors in borrowed armor, closed in. One grabbed my hair, another shoved me hard against the altar. A third reached for Marin. She screamed. And I fought like my mother must have fought in her final moments. Feral, wild, unyielding. I sank my teeth into the arm holding me. I drove my knee into another's stomach. I clawed at faces, throats, anything I could reach. But they were too many. Hands pinned my arms. A blade touched Marin's throat. Stop, one hissed. Or she dies. My body locked, air trapped in my chest. No, I whispered. Please, please. She's just a child. She's an abomination, the leader snarled. Half human, half wolf blood. She will never sit on the throne. Marin sobbed, small body shaking. Let her go, I begged, tears blurring my vision. Take me instead. We want both, he growled. The kingdom falls when the Luna line ends. He motioned to the others. Take the girl. Kill the mother. The world stopped. No, no! I thrashed, tried to break free, but steel-tight arms held me down. The leader reached for Marin, and the earth started shaking. No, not the earth. A roar. A sound so furious, so ancient, so alpha deep it rattled leaves from the courtyard trees. The traders froze. And then, Cajun arrived. No cloak, no crown, no guards. Only a king whose wolf was seconds from ripping free of his skin. His eyes, normally storm silver, were molten white. A deathlight, the mark of an alpha losing control. Every muscle in his body vibrated with murderous fury. You, he snarled, voice shaking the stones beneath us, will not touch my family again. The courtyard trembled. The traders panicked. Two reached for Marin. Casian blurred forward. I didn't even see him move. 1 second, the traders were standing. The next, they were on the ground, arms twisted, ribs shattered, breath knocked out of them. Casian grabbed the leader by the throat and slammed him into the altar so hard the stone cracked. You think you can steal my blood? Casian roared. You think you can touch my granddaughter? The man sputtered. She's not rightful. Casian lifted him higher, growl shaking the air. She is chosen by destiny. He threw the traitor so far the man hit the courtyard wall and didn't rise. Then he turned to me. I was on my knees, arms wrapped around Marin, both of us shaking. Tears streaked my face. Blood smeared my hands. Cajun dropped beside us instantly. Isla! His voice broke. Marin! He looked at the small marks on her neck where the blade had touched. His hands trembled. I was almost too late, he whispered. Marin leaned into him, clutching his shirt. You came, she said softly. I knew you would. Cassian inhaled raggedly, then pulled us both into his arms, holding us as if he could fuse us to him by sheer will. I will not lose you, he vowed into my hair. Not again, not ever. Around us, guards swarmed in, the last traitors restrained, but all I could feel was the pounding of Caitian's heart against my cheek, and the terrifying, irreversible truth. He hadn't roared for the kingdom. He had roared for us. The amphitheater of the Moon Court had always seemed enormous to me, an arena carved into the heart of the castle, where wolves gathered for judgment, celebration, and pack rights. But that morning, as thousands of wolves filled the rising tiers, as the air crackled with fury and anticipation, as the accused counselors were dragged into the center in shackles, it felt like the entire world was watching. Caitian stood at the highest dais, the throne behind him burning with torchlight, the crest of the nightfall line shimmering above his head like a warning. I sat below him in the front row, Marin on my lap. Her small body rested against mine, warm and steady, and glowing. Just slightly. Just enough for those nearest to whisper, shifting uncomfortably as her aura pulsed like a heartbeat. Cajun let the murmurs ripple for a few seconds. Let their fear settle. Then he lifted his head, voice carrying through the entire amphitheater. Bring forth the accused. The crowd parted. Varen, Tassian, Morrow, dragged by warriors, their robes torn, their faces bruised from the failed abduction. Wolves snarled from every tier, claws scraped stone, teeth flashed. Cassian didn't raise a hand to silence them. He didn't need to. His presence alone made the air tighten. Nightfall pack, he called, voice like thunder. Today we stand on the edge of betrayal's shadow. He paced slowly, eyes locked on the counselors. These three stand charged with 4 crimes. He raised one finger. Treason. Another. The murder of your Luna. A third. The attempted murder of her granddaughter. A fourth. And conspiracy against your throne. Gasps rippled outward. Even though half the pack suspected the truth, hearing it declared so openly made the ground feel unsteady beneath us. The counselors stiffened. Morrow spat blood at Cassian's feet. You have no proof, he snarled. She is a human, A liar! The amphitheater erupted in outrage. Cassian's aura flared so violently that even I flinched. No, he said coldly. She is Luna-born. He turned his gaze to me, but more importantly, to Marin. My blood runs in her, my mate's blood, my line. Marin leaned against my chest, small hands curled into my cloak. She was calm, too calm, almost shimmering with the quiet certainty of a truth too old to challenge. Cassian extended a hand toward her. Marin. Her head lifted. The glow behind her eyes brightened. I need you to tell this court something. The crowd held its breath. Even the wind stilled. He pointed to the counselors. Do they smell of death? A hush fell so deep it pressed against my ears like pressure. Marin slid off my lap and stood. Tiny, barefoot, haloed by the morning sun scraping over the amphitheater walls. She didn't tremble. She didn't hide. She walked to my side, then to the very edge of the judgment platform. 3 men waited. 3 murderers. 3 conspirators who had destroyed my family long before I ever understood I belonged to one. The entire pack leaned forward as she inhaled. Soft, slow, precise. Her little nose wrinkled. Then she looked up at Cassian, voice ringing clear as moonlight on steel. They smell of hurting. A ripple of shock tore through the amphitheater. The wolves responded immediately. Howls, roars, furious cries, rising like a storm breaking open the sky. Kill them! Justice for the Luna! Protect the air! The tremors of rage shook the layered stone. Cassian didn't quiet them at first. He stood unmoved, watching his granddaughter stand in front of the kingdom. Small, golden, unflinching. Then his voice cut through the uproar. Silence. It wasn't a shout. It was a command, edged with power. The pack obeyed instantly. Cassian's gaze locked onto the 3 men who had taken everything from him. You murdered my mate, he said, voice trembling with the force of a wound never healed. You tried to kill my Luna's child. You tried to steal my heir. And tonight, his voice cracked. You nearly stole my granddaughter. A growl rolled through the crowd. This court has heard your crimes, it has seen your treachery, and it has heard the judgment of the one destined to choose the next Alpha King. All eyes fell to Marin, and for the first time I realized they didn't just fear her, they revered her. Cassian lifted a hand, a death sentence gesture. For treason against the Nightfall line, he said softly. I sentence you to... Cassian, I whispered, rising to my feet before I realized I'd moved. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but then hardened again. There is no mercy for those who kill Lunas. A shudder passed through the amphitheater. The counselors fell to their knees, not because they chose to, but because the weight of the pack's collective fury drove them there. Marin walked back to me. Her small fingers slipped into mine. They're scared now, Mama, she whispered. They know what they did. And with her words, the kingdom crossed a line it could never return from. Justice had come, final, irreversible, and written not by a king, but by a child born of sun and moon. I found Cassian in the one place no one else ever went, the abandoned moon terrace at the top of the eastern tower. It was where my mother once stood during ceremonies, where she was last seen alive, where Cassian had searched for her shadow long after she was gone. Now he stood with his back to me, hands gripping the stone railing so tightly cracks spiderwebbed beneath his fingers. The night wind tore through his hair. Torchlight flickered across broad shoulders that seemed too heavy even for an Alpha King. I approached slowly. He didn't turn, didn't speak. But he knew I was there. Cassian, I whispered. His breath hitched. For a long heartbeat, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his voice, broken, raw, stripped of every shield, spilled into the night air. I failed her. My chest tightened. He didn't raise his head, The words shook themselves free like something he'd caged inside for 26 years. I failed your mother, he said again, lower, harsher. I let her walk out of this kingdom alone. I let those men, he swallowed hard, plot under my nose. I should have protected her. I should have seen it. A gust of cold air swept between us. He looked up, jaw clenched, eyes shining with a grief so old it had calcified inside him. I never stopped searching, he whispered. Not for a day, not for an hour. I hunted every pack, every rogue trail, every whisper, but I never found her. Something inside me cracked open. My mother. My voice trembled. She died alone, afraid, hiding her own child, hiding me. Kasian pressed a hand over his face, shaking. I should have found you, he choked. I should have known. You were alive. I should have. His voice broke entirely. This man, this ruthless, feared ruler, was unraveling in front of me, not as a king, not as a wolf, but as a man who had lost the love of his life. I stepped closer. He didn't look at me. She loved you, I whispered. The words felt like lifting a weight I'd carried my entire life. She must have. She wrote to you even while she ran. She begged the gods that you would survive the coup. She believed in you. Kasian's breath shuddered. He lowered his hand, eyes red-rimmed. Pain lived there, old and primal. I thought I'd never see a piece of her again, he whispered. And then you walked into my hall, wearing her face. Tears blurred my vision. For years, I said softly, I thought my mother was just a human healer, a woman who scraped through poverty and illness. I never knew she was Luna. I never knew she was yours. His throat bobbed. He stepped closer, only inches between us. And I never knew she left me a daughter, he murmured. A daughter who survived, who lived, who grew into everything we lost. My eyes burned, not with fear, not with shock, with mourning. For so long, I whispered, I hated the kingdom that crushed us. I hated the wolves who laughed as I scrubbed floors. I hated myself for never knowing where I belonged. A tear slipped down my cheek. For the first time, I know. Kasian's eyes softened, anguish twisting into something gentler. He reached out tentatively, fingertips brushing mine, as if asking permission not as a king, but as a man learning to be a father in the only way he knew how. I cannot undo the past, he whispered, but I will not fail you, or your daughter, or the Luna's line ever again. The dam inside me finally broke. I cried, not quietly, not politely, but with 26 years of confusion and grief and longing tearing their way out. For the mother I never understood, for the father I never had, for the kingdom that erased my family and then delivered me back into its heart. Kasian didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and gathered me against his chest. Not possessive, not commanding, just there, solid and warm and shaking as hard as I was. I felt his tears hit my hair. A small hand tugged at my cloak. We broke apart enough to look down. Maren blinked up at us, her eyes glowing faint gold, her expression soft and impossibly wise for 6 years old. She lifted her arms. Without a word, Kasian scooped her up. She wrapped one tiny arm around his neck, the other around mine, pulling us together until her forehead rested against both of us. You don't have to be sad anymore, she whispered. We're together now. Kasian closed his eyes. I pressed a hand to her back. And for the first time, in the ruins of heartbreak and bloodlines and revelations, we weren't 3 broken pieces from 3 broken stories. We were something else, something whole, something new. A family built not by fate's cruelty, but by surviving it, together. The moon always felt larger in the Nightfall Kingdom, closer, heavier, watching. But that night, as I stood at the center of the moonlit amphitheater with thousands of wolves filling the tiers around us, it felt like the moon was bearing witness. To me, to Marin, to everything my mother died to protect. The ceremony platform glowed silver beneath my feet, etched with ancient crescent symbols. Torches ringed the high stone walls, flickering in unison as if the fire itself bowed to the approaching moment. Kasian stood at my side. No crown, no armor, just the Alpha King in ceremonial black. The white trim of mourning still stitched along the sleeves for the mate he'd lost. For the woman who was my mother. He carried the Luna's crest in his palm, a pendant shaped like a rising sun embraced by a crescent moon. I had seen it only in portraits, around my mother's throat, in my nightmares. Now here it was, glowing with a soft, otherworldly warmth, as if it remembered the blood it belonged to. My blood. The wolves fell silent as Caitian raised his voice, carrying with alpha resonance across the open sky. Nightfall Pack, he called. For 26 years you believed our Luna had fallen, that her line had ended, that the throne she blessed died with her. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cassian lifted the crest slightly, moonlight pooling across its surface. But the Luna lived through her child. She survived in Isla Nightfall. The name hit me like a physical force. Nightfall. My mother's name. My name. My knees almost buckled. Marin squeezed my hand from where she stood beside me, her small fingers anchoring me. She rose from ashes she did not know she carried, Caitian continued, voice deepening, and she found her way home. The amphitheater trembled, wolves shifting, tails lowering, heads bowing even before the formal declaration. Caisian turned to me fully. For a moment, there was no kingdom, no prophecy, no bloodshed, only a man who had lost everything and returned to find his daughter standing in the remains. His voice and his hands shook. Isla, he murmured softly, daughter of my Luna, will you accept the crest she once wore? My throat closed. Tears blurred the silver torches into smears of light. The word caught. I tried again. I will. Caisian stepped closer, slowly, reverently, as though afraid the moment might shatter. He lifted the chain and settled it around my neck. His hands brushed my shoulders. Warm, steady. A father's touch, hesitant, hopeful, breaking. The pendant lay over my heart, its weight sinking into me as if claiming a space it had always belonged to. A murmur of awe rolled through the wolves. Cassian turned to the pack. I present to you Esla, he declared, voice ringing across stone and sky alike. Child of the lost Luna, rightful heir of her blood, and restored daughter of the Nightfall line. A roar shook the amphitheater. Wolves bowed, every single one of them. Thousands of bodies lowering, heads pressed to the ground. For me. My breath trembled, chest tight. I'd never belonged anywhere in my life, never had a name that meant anything, never stood tall enough to be seen. Now, the world knelt. Caisian reached for Marin next. She went to him without fear, without hesitation, as though her little heart already understood the moment in ways words couldn't hold. Caitian lifted her easily, settling her on his hip, one hand steadying her back. He looked at her with a softness that belonged to no king, only a grandfather hollowed by loss and remade by love. He raised her toward the moonlight. This child, he announced, is blood of my blood. The amphitheater went silent, a breath held by thousands. The heir's heir, he continued, born of sun and moon, of prophecy and truth. Marin rested her head against his shoulder, glowing faintly, gold under silver. The future Luna of Nightfall, Caisian finished, voice suddenly breaking with the force of it. A thunderous howl erupted. Wolves shifted into their forms, silver, black, brown, white, throwing back their heads in honor and acceptance. The sound washed over me like a wave, raw, ancient, overwhelming, belonging, recognition, emergence. My eyes burned, my hands shook, my heart, for the first time, felt whole. Cation lowered Marin into my arms. He brushed a trembling thumb across my cheek. Welcome home, Isla. The crest against my skin pulsed with warmth. And as the entire kingdom bowed again, I trembled, not from fear, but because I finally understood. I had not stepped into my mother's shadow. I had stepped into her legacy. The kingdom did not break quietly. Revolutions never do. The day after the ceremony, the moon court still smelled of incense and triumph, but the rest of the Nightfall Kingdom trembled like the crack before an earthquake. I could feel it the moment I stepped onto the balcony overlooking the training grounds. Wolves gathered in clusters, voices sharp, expressions tight. Some bowed when they saw the Luna's crest on my chest. Others turned away. Others bared their teeth. Kazian joined me a moment later, his cloak billowing behind him like a moving storm. His jaw was set, tense enough to crack bone. They're afraid, I murmured. They're waking up, he corrected. Fear is temporary. Change is inevitable. Below us, two warriors were arguing, loudly. She's human-born, one shouted. The laws are clear. The throne cannot be touched by impure blood. The laws are dead, another snarled back. Wake up. We nearly lost the kingdom because of pure-blood pride. Kajian exhaled sharply. That's the problem. The old laws prioritized bloodline purity over loyalty, power, or truth. Those laws nearly killed you, nearly killed your mother, nearly destroyed us. And then he stepped forward, projecting his alpha voice across the grounds. It echoed, booming off stone walls and steel blades. All wolves to the courtyard, now! The order reverberated through the kingdom like an invisible command. Wolves shifted. Doors swung open. The air filled with bodies moving. Within minutes, the courtyard was packed, tiers overflowing, walls lined. Every soldier and noble and servant gathered under the high sun. Marin stood beside me, her small hand gripping mine. The Luna's crest glinted over my heart, heavy as prophecy. I felt Kaitian's presence behind me, solid, fierce, unshakable. When the courtyard finally settled, Kaitian stepped into full view. His aura flooded the space. Nightfall Pack, he called. For centuries, your laws have demanded purity of blood. A rumble moved through the crowd, agreement, resistance, fear. And because of those laws, Kaitian continued, voice sharpening, you allowed treason to flower in your council. Silence. You let murderers hide behind old words and ancient arrogance. Wolves lowered their heads. Some shifted restlessly, ears pinned back. You believed human blood was weakness, he growled, and in doing so, you let weak men hold power. His voice thundered now. You believed impurity was danger, and impurity saved this kingdom. Gasps echoed. Kazian's gaze landed on me, on Marin. Then he spoke the words I never expected to hear from a king, words that felt like tearing down the sky. I hereby dissolve the old laws of bloodline purity. Shock rippled. Outrage. Hope. Kaitian raised a hand, silencing all of it. From this day forward, he declared, loyalty defines strength, courage defines worth, and power, true power, can rise from any blood. Wolves whispered among themselves. Arguments erupted. Some backed away as if scorched, and some bowed. A few nobles stepped forward, heads bent in submission, but others bristled. A warrior shouted, "This is madness! The throne will fall!" Kaitian's smile was deadly. It already did, he said, and what rose from the ashes was stronger. Another wolf snarled, "We won't follow a human-born heir." Kaitian didn't move, but his voice iced over. You'll follow the next Alpha King chosen by Destiny herself. His tone brooked no challenge, and Destiny has chosen a child of sun and moon. He motioned lightly, and Marin stepped forward. She didn't glow, not visibly, but the air tightened around her, bending as though it recognized her place in it. Some wolves bowed instinctively, others fought the instinct and trembled. Marin lifted her chin with a quiet calm I envied. "I don't want to fight you," she said simply. "I just want our home to be safe." Her little voice carried like a melody through the tension. Kazian placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes burning with a mix of pride and terror. "The kingdom you were born into," he said to her, "and to all of us, is broken." He scanned the crowd. But broken things can be reforged. Walls can be rebuilt. Alliances reforged. Power redefined. He stepped between Marin and me, standing as our anchor. But only if we stand united. Some wolves knelt, some growled, some wept, and yes, some turned and walked away. Revolutions never win unanimously, but they win where it matters. Cation turned to me then, voice lowering just enough for the nearest wolves to hear, and for my heart to stutter. "You are not alone in this, Isla." Marin slipped her hand into mine. "We're together," she whispered. "Together." The Luna's daughter, the heir of sun and moon, the king who had broken for his family and rebuilt himself for us. The kingdom wasn't stable. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But for the first time in its history, it was honest. It was breaking in order to be remade. And at the center of the storm, we stood as the new foundation, a family forged by loss, strengthened by truth, bound by destiny, and ready to rebuild a kingdom from the shattered pieces of the old one. The throne room feels different now. Months have passed since the night everything broke, and the weeks where we carefully stitched the kingdom back together. The stone floors gleam, the torches burn warmer. The halls hum with something Nightfall hasn't felt in decades. Peace. Real peace. Marin sits on the wide stone steps just below the throne, giggling as a cluster of wolf pups tumble over each other to reach her. One licks her cheek, another noses into her lap. A third refuses to leave her side at all, pressed against her leg like a tiny guardian. She glows, not with prophecy, not with power, but with the simple joy of a 6-year-old who now knows she is loved, protected, and home. I stand beside Cation on the dais. My mother's crest rests against my chest, warm even in the winter air. Its glow is faint but steady, like a heartbeat that never belonged to one person alone, but to a whole lineage. The court doors open, and a group of visiting alphas and emissaries step inside. Their eyes widen, not at Cation, not at the throne, but at the child sitting at its steps, surrounded by wolf pups as if the kingdom itself bends protectively around her. One visitor whispers, "That child united us." Another murmurs, "The daughter of the lost Luna." And a third, voice hushed with reverence, finishes, "The little girl who pointed at a portrait and changed everything." I swallow hard, emotion gathering in my throat. I still remember that moment, Marin tugging at my sleeve, pointing up at a woman's painted face that had haunted the kingdom for years. "Why is my mommy here?" she had asked. And with those 5 words, everything started to crack open. Everything started to heal. Cation steps. Closer, his presence warm and steady at my side. The moonlight touches the silver streaks beginning to show in his dark hair, making him look softer, more human than the legendary Alpha King carved into a dozen statues. He places his hand over mine, not as a king claiming a successor, not as a warrior vowing protection, but as a father finding the daughter he lost before she was even born. "Our kingdom shattered the day your mother died," he says quietly, voice thick with memory. and it stayed broken far too long. I nod, my chest tightening. I know. He squeezes my hand gently. But today, he continues, gaze drifting to Marin. Because of you, and that child who carries both your strengths, it is whole again. Tears sting my eyes, hot and sudden. Not the tears of grief I cried for weeks after learning the truth. Not the tears of rage from the trial. Not the tears of terror in the courtyard when a blade touched Marin's throat. These tears feel different. These tears feel right. Marin looks up from her play, spotting us. Mama! Grandpa Cassian! She calls proudly, using the title she chose on her own. Cassian's breath catches. He still isn't used to it. She pats the stone beside her. Come sit. The babies like warm people. Cassian laughs, a warm, rare sound that still startles the guards. We'll be down soon, little moon, he calls back. She beams. I follow her gaze to the high wall where portraits of the royal line hang in chronological order. Torches have been placed beneath each frame, casting a glow that never falters. For years, one portrait remained dim, neglected, untouched. Now, all three spaces shine with light. My mother, myself, my daughter. 3 generations of Luna blood. 3 women the kingdom once believed lost. A legacy restored. A family remade by truth. A kingdom rebuilt through the courage of a child who didn't understand the world's cruelty, only its truth. Cassian looks at me again, eyes softer than I ever imagined they could be. You carry her strength, he murmurs, and her heart. And Marin carries both, I whisper. He nods, emotion tightening his voice. She is the future of Nightfall. I let myself smile, a full, trembling smile that reaches deeper than relief, deeper than survival. A smile born from belonging, from love, from legacy. I step down toward Marin, Cassian beside me, our steps matching in silent unity. She squeals with joy when we reach her, pressing a wolf pup into Cassian's arms as though a king holding a puppy is perfectly natural. He laughs, helpless, and I realize the kingdom didn't just gain stability, it gained a family. A family stitched together from loss and fate and improbable courage. A family that will shape the future. And as the moon rises above the shattered walls now rebuilt, I know with absolute certainty, we did not just inherit a kingdom, we changed it forever.